Louise sat on the edge of their king-size bed, her legs folded, the muted glow of her tablet casting a soft light against her bare knees. Mark was still in the kitchen washing up the dinner plates, humming the same old tune he always did after a long workday. Something country, something steady, something safe. She used to find comfort in that hum. Now, it grated like wallpaper peeling off a damp wall, a reminder of how much had stopped moving. Outside their window, the cul-de-sac was still. No drama, no surprises, just the rhythm of life repeating itself, clean and predictable. Mark hadn't changed. He was still handsome in his work-worn way, strong arms from years in HVAC, silver starting to run through his beard. Still brought her coffee on Sunday mornings. Still opened the car door when they went out to Applebee's every third Friday. Still kissed her goodnight. But that was just it. Everything was still. She tapped open the group chat again. Janet. Girl, you ever wonder if you our man would let you go have some fun on the side? Tina. LOL, it's 2020-something, nobody owns anybody anymore. Janet. Exactly. Freedom is love, LOL. Louise's thumb hovered over the reply field, then pulled back. It started as a joke. A few too many wine spritzers after closing the deal with a new real estate client. But lately, the talk had changed. Janet didn't just joke. She shared stories, screenshots, new profiles. Her voice took on that teasing edge, like she was in on something bigger. You ever think about it? Janet asked her last week in the break room. Sipping green juice and wearing jeans no woman over 35 had any right fitting into. You're too hot to sit around waiting for Mark to take you to Outback Steakhouse twice a month. There's a whole world out there. Hell, I'll even introduce you. Louise laughed, but it lingered. Tonight, the weight of it pressed harder. She wasn't angry, not exactly, but there was this low hum inside her. Restlessness, boredom, maybe even envy. She envied the women who wore freedom like a second skin, who didn't ask permission, who didn't feel guilty for craving something else. She closed the tablet and rubbed her hands together. Her fingers were cold. The ring felt heavier than usual. Footsteps in the hallway. You want tea? Mark asked from the doorway, holding up a mug. That same tired smile. Always kind. Always present. She nodded. Yeah, thanks. He walked in, set it beside her, leaned down and kissed her on the temple. She felt nothing. Not because he wasn't good, but because she had changed. Something inside had shifted, or broken, or just dulled. She watched him leave, then stared at the untouched mug. Her pulse quickened, not because she was scared, but because she was about to be. She'd made up her mind. The girls nodded like they already knew. She will tell him tomorrow, after dinner, after the kids were asleep. Janet had winked before they left the office that evening. He'll be lucky, she'd whispered. And if he gets lonely, we'll throw him a bone. One of us will keep him company while you're out with the hotties. Louise had forced a smile, but that part stuck with her in all the wrong ways. She didn't like the thought of her friends touching her man. Mark was still hers, even if she wasn't sure she wanted to be his anymore. The thought twisted something in her gut. She pulled the blanket over her lap and stared at the blank television screen across the room. It reflected her back. 39, still attractive, toned from yoga, highlighted hair, clean skin. But something in the eyes looked tired. Not old, just worn thin, like she'd spent too long pretending that fine was enough. A whisper inside her said, "What if this is a mistake?" But another voice, louder and more defiant, replied, "What if this is your last chance to feel alive again?" She took a deep breath and picked up the tea. The warmth stung her lips. Tomorrow she will light the match. It was a quiet Tuesday night when Louise finally did it. Mark had just come back from his volunteer shift at the firehouse. He still kept his certification, even though he mostly handled admin work now. Louise watched him from across the dinner table, the way his broad shoulders curved over his plate, the way his hands, steady, reliable, cut through the meatloaf she made. It all looked so normal. The kids had already eaten earlier. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher and the tick of the old wall clock that Mark's father gave them when they got married. 12 years. That's how long they'd made this life work. Something on your mind? Mark asked between bites. She blinked. Yeah, can we talk? He set his fork down, wiped his mouth and leaned back, sensing something. Sure. Louise's hands shook slightly, but she pushed through it. I've been thinking about us, about life, and I just feel like I'm missing something. Mark narrowed his eyes. Missing what? I don't know. Excitement? Freedom. Something that makes me feel more alive. She took a deep breath. I've been talking with the girls at work. Janet, Tina. They've opened up their marriages. It's more common now than people think. He froze, then sat upright. You mean, what exactly? I mean, I want to try that. An open marriage. Just for a while. I don't want a divorce. I just need to experience more. I love you, Mark. But he pushed his chair back slowly. The legs scraped the tile. You love me. So you want to sleep with other men? No, yes, God. It's not just about sex. It's about. Say it, Mark said, his voice low and steady. You're bored with your life. You're bored with me. That's not fair. Fair. Mark laughed, but there was no humor in it. He walked over to the sink, poured himself a glass of water, drank it like he was trying to kill the fire rising in his chest. You know, I work all damn day. I come home, take care of things around here, try to be a good husband, a good father. I didn't cheat. I didn't run. I didn't even look at anyone else. And you come in here talking about freedom, like I'm holding you hostage. She bit her lip, guilt slamming into her. It's not about punishing you. I need something different. Mark leaned on the counter back to her. His silence was louder than a scream. When he finally spoke, his words were cold steel. You want an open marriage? Fine. Her heart skipped. You'll consider it? I didn't say I wanted it. I said if that's what it takes for you to figure out what the hell you want, then go ahead. But don't expect me to sit around like some damn backup option while you relive your 20s with some guy named Chad from a bar. She flinched. I'll set boundaries, he added, turning around. The kids don't hear about this. We don't bring anyone into this house. And when I'm done tolerating it, if I ever reach that point, you better believe you won't get a second warning. She nodded, unsure whether she'd won or lost. Okay. Don't okay me. He walked past her, his tone flat, like a man signing divorce papers before the ink even touched the page. You made your choice. I'm just adjusting to it. Mark, I still love you. He paused in the hallway. You keep saying that. Doesn't sound like it. Then he walked into the den and shut the door. Louise sat in the kitchen, staring at the empty chair where her husband used to smile at her from. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. It wasn't the reaction she expected. No shouting, no begging, no threats. Just that distant, raw disappointment, the kind that didn't fade overnight. Mark wasn't the type to chase. He never had been. She told herself this was still the right choice. But deep down, something already felt broken. The first night felt electric. That's what she told herself. Louise stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the gold hoop earrings she hadn't worn since her 30s. Her dress clung to her hips in a way she hadn't dared in years. Janet said it looked hot. You don't look like someone's wife, she'd winked. You look like someone's mistake. Louise wasn't sure if that was a compliment, but it made her feel dangerous. Downstairs, Mark sat on the couch, sipping whiskey neat and watching a rerun of some black and white western. He didn't look up when she walked by, didn't say a word, just nodded once, the way a man does when a door's already closed in his heart. She left without saying goodbye. The bar was full. Not college kids, too messy, but late 30s, early 40s types who dressed well and tried not to look desperate. Janet was already 3 cocktails in, laughing at some guy's joke. Tina waved her over with a grin. This is the famous Louise, she said. The one finally stepping out. The man across from them stood and extended a hand. Mike, divorced, 2 kids, former Marine. I promise I'm less excited than that sounds. Louise smiled. Nice to meet you, Mike. By the end of the night, she'd given him her number. It didn't happen right away. The first few weeks were flirtation, texting, the thrill of someone calling her beautiful again. Mike was charming, sure, but also safe. No pressure. And he made her laugh in a way Mark hadn't in a long time. Their first night together was at a hotel just outside town. Clean sheets, dim lighting, 2 glasses of cheap red wine from the vending machine. Louise felt the rush of being touched again by someone new. Someone who didn't know how she liked her coffee or what her laugh sounded like after a long cry. Afterwards, Mike dozed off while she stared at the ceiling. Her pulse had settled, but her thoughts hadn't. The sex was fine, good even, but the guilt crept in like fog under the door. She drove home at 3 a.m. The house was dark. Mark's truck was in the driveway. She slipped into bed without brushing her teeth. He didn't say a word. Over the next month, there were more nights like that. A few with Mike. One with a man named Craig who was 27 and called her ma'am by accident. The attention felt flattering at first, then shallow, then hollow. Her phone lit up constantly now. Janet loved it. You're glowing, she said one morning. Seriously, like a post-honeymoon glow. Mark must be spinning. Louise faked a laugh. Yeah, maybe. But Mark wasn't spinning. He wasn't even moving. He woke up early, made the kids breakfast, packed lunches, fixed the garage door without asking for help. He didn't pry, didn't yell, didn't act jealous. And somehow that hurt worse than rage. One afternoon, she came home early from lunch with Craig. The house smelled like fresh-baked cookies. Her daughter, Ella, was standing on a step stool in the kitchen while Mark helped her stir batter. Louise smiled at the sight, until Ella turned and said, Daddy said you were out with your friends again. I thought you didn't like Craig. Mark didn't flinch. Louise's stomach dropped. You what? Mark kept his voice calm. She asked why you're never around after work anymore. I told her the truth. Mommy's spending more time with new friends. Louise swallowed hard. That's not fair. He looked at her then, really looked at her. Not angry. Not bitter, just tired. You made the rules, Lou. I'm just playing with them. That night, she sat in her car in the driveway for over an hour before going inside. She stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Smudged lipstick, tired eyes, empty glow. Freedom didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt like floating, detached and cold. The kids were asleep. Mark was in the garage, sanding a piece of wood. His projects have grown lately, bigger, louder, like he needed to keep his hands busy to keep the silence out. Louise stood in the doorway. You okay? He didn't turn. Fine. She stepped in. I thought this would feel different. He kept sanding. I thought I'd feel free, alive, but I just feel lost. Mark finally stopped. He looked at her with that quiet strength that used to make her feel safe. Now it made her feel small. You wanted more, he said. So go find it. Then he turned back to his work, and Louise realized this wasn't just distance. This was the beginning of him letting her go. It had been 3 months since the conversation that turned their home into a quiet battlefield. Louise sat alone at the kitchen table, pushing a fork through scrambled eggs she didn't want to eat. Mark had already left for work. He didn't say goodbye anymore. Didn't even glance her way when he passed her in the morning. Their routine had become surgical. Clean, cold, no affection, just function. The kids felt it. Ella, their daughter, stopped asking for bedtime stories. Tyler, their son, no longer waited up to talk about his day. Louise caught them whispering more, glancing at her when they thought she couldn't see. She couldn't tell if they blamed her, or if they just missed the family that used to be. The nights were the worst. Mark stayed up late working in the garage or at Emily's place, at first just helping her with renovations. Then, Louise noticed he stayed longer. Laughed louder when she called to ask when he'd be home. Emily, the friend who used to drop by with casseroles. The one who always looked at Mark a little too long when he fixed her leaky faucet. Now, Louise didn't ask where he went. She wasn't sure she wanted the answer. She met Tom at a bar that Friday night. He was charming, polished, the kind of man who made women feel seen. She let him talk about himself for an hour, then let him take her to his place. But when she got back home, Mark was sitting in the living room, drinking a beer, not watching TV, not reading, just sitting in the dark. "You have fun?" he asked without turning his head. She froze. Yeah." He took a slow sip. "Does he kiss better than me?" "Mark, don't. You asked for this." His voice was calm, but sharp. "You wanted freedom, so don't look so guilty when you come home smelling of cologne and hotel soap." She bit her lip. "You said you were okay with it. I said I'd tolerate it. That's not the same thing." Louise sat down on the armrest of the opposite chair, her voice low. "I thought I'd feel alive again. Do you?" "No." A long silence. "I miss who we were," she whispered. Mark's eyes finally met hers. "I miss who you were." The room tightened around them. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse than that. It was a quiet heartbreak, mutual, unavoidable. Louise stood to leave, but her legs felt heavy. "Are you seeing Emily?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "She listens." Louise's throat tightened. "So you are." "She didn't push me into something just to chase a thrill," he added. "She didn't ask me to open a marriage just to close the distance. That's not fair." "No. What's not fair is asking me to share you, to pretend we're okay, while you chase validation from men who don't even know what side of the bed you sleep on." Louise had no answer, just silence. He stood, walked past her, and paused at the foot of the stairs. "You broke this, Lou. You broke us. And now you're breaking the kids, too." The guilt hit her like a freight train. Later that week, Ella came home from school with a drawing of a broken house. 2 stick figures on one side, one on the other. She asked, "Mommy, are you moving away?" Louise's heart cracked in half. She didn't cry, not in front of her daughter. But that night, she locked herself in the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and let herself sob. She hadn't meant to become the problem. She just wanted something to change. But somewhere between the thrill and the fantasy, she had lost the only real thing she'd ever had. Mark wasn't cruel. He didn't scream. He didn't throw her out. He just stopped looking at her like she mattered. And that, Louise realized, was the worst punishment of all. Tom took her to a rooftop bar with string lights and jazz music. The kind of place that made middle-aged women feel young again, like they still had time to rewrite everything. Louise sipped her wine, nodded at his stories, and laughed when it was expected. But inside, her thoughts were miles away. In her old kitchen, her children's bedrooms, the quiet sound of Mark's boots by the door. Tom reached for her hand across the table. "You always get this faraway look, like you're watching a train leave the station." Louise gave a weak smile. "I guess I missed one." Tom leaned back. "You're not still thinking about your husband, are you?" She shrugged. "Ex-husband. Almost." Tom raised an eyebrow. "He signed yet?" "No, but he's moved on." He nodded like he understood. But Louise knew he didn't. Not really. Tom was charming but shallow. A nice enough man to spend a few hours with. But when he spoke about emotions, it was like someone reading off a cue card. She stayed at his place that night. But in the morning, she watched him sleep and realized she didn't belong there. Not in that bed. Not in that story. By the time she got home, the house was quiet. Mark had already left with the kids' soccer game. She found a note on the counter in his all-caps handwriting. "Tyler's game at 10. Ella wants you to come this time. Up to you." Louise stared at the note for a long time. Felt more like a challenge than an invitation. She showed up 10 minutes late. Tyler didn't even wave. Ella barely looked her way. Mark stood on the sidelines beside Emily. Louise paused before approaching. Emily wore jeans, boots, and a red flannel, hair in a ponytail. She looked like she belonged in Mark's world. Someone grounded, capable. Not flashy, not chasing excitement, just a present. Emily saw her first, gave a polite smile. Louise nodded back. They stood there 3 feet apart, like survivors of different storms. I didn't expect to see you here, Emily said gently. I almost didn't come, Louise admitted. Emily didn't rub it in. She just looked at the field. They play better when they know you're watching. Louise swallowed. How long have you and Mark been talking? Emily was quiet for a moment. Since he stopped talking to you. Louise flinched. That's honest. Emily glanced sideways. You didn't want to be polite, did you? No, Louise admitted. Emily folded her arms. Look, I'm not here to take your place. I was here when you left it. That's all. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't cruel. It was just the truth. After the game, Tyler walked off the field, straight past Louise and into Mark's arms. Ella followed. Neither said much. They'd learned something from their father, how to shut a door without slamming it. That night, Louise called Emily. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, she said quietly. I thought I wanted to feel alive again, but I just feel disconnected. Emily didn't gloat. She didn't throw punches. She simply asked, Then why are you still playing pretend with men who don't know you? Louise had no answer. You want my advice? Emily continued. Be their mother again. Start there. But Mark is gone, Emily said. He's not angry anymore. Just done. It wasn't meant to be cruel. It was a kindness, the last one. Louise sat alone in her living room after that, the silence thick around her. She looked at the empty couch where she used to sit with Mark on movie nights, kids piled between them, popcorn spilling onto the rug. That life was gone. She thought she'd find freedom in her choices. What she found was silence, distance, and a man who learned how to let her go without raising his voice. And she couldn't even blame him. The first time Louise showed up to Tyler's game on time, he didn't smile, but he nodded. It was something. The second time, Ella waved. It wasn't a warm embrace or a long talk, but it was a crack in the wall. Louise started making it a habit. Saturdays meant kids' activities. Sundays meant cooking pancakes whether anyone ate them or not. She'd sit on the edge of her daughter's bed and ask about her drawings, and ask Tyler about school. At first, they gave short answers, then longer ones. It was slow, painfully slow, but Louise understood now. This wasn't about fixing anything. It was about earning back what she gave up. Mark kept his distance. They still shared the house for now, but they were two tenants living separate lives. He used the spare room, paid the mortgage, said good morning to the kids, never to her. He wasn't angry anymore. That part had burned out. Now he was just done, and he looked lighter for it. He laughed more around Emily. She comes by often now, helped in the garage, sat at the dinner table when Louise wasn't home. She didn't hover, didn't gloat. She just fit. And that hurt more than anything, because Louise used to fit too. One afternoon, as she folded laundry, Ella peeked in. Daddy said we're going to the lake with Miss Emily next weekend. Louise paused. You want to go? Ella nodded. She brings snacks and tells funny stories. Louise smiled, but her heart dropped. She sounds nice. She is, Ella said simply. But I still want you to come to my dance recital. I wouldn't miss it. It was the first time her daughter hugged her in weeks. That night, Louise walked into the kitchen and found Mark wiping down the counter. He barely glanced up. I'm moving out, she said. He paused. You finally decide where? Small place near the school. 2 bedrooms. I'll have them a few nights a week if that still works. He nodded. Fine. I'm trying, Mark. With the kids. They see it, he said. Just keep going. He didn't offer comfort. No small talk. Just that same quiet steadiness he always had. But he didn't stop her either. That weekend, Louise watched the truck pull away. Mark, the kids, Emily beside them. She stood on the porch, arms folded, alone. But this time, the silence wasn't punishment. It was clear. This was her new reality. She'd broken the family. She couldn't unbreak it, but she could start showing up again. Not to win them back, but to earn what little trust remained. She spent the evening organizing boxes, setting up the kids' room in the new apartment, framed old photos, put out their favorite books, made space. Not just physically, but emotionally. She'd spent months chasing strangers who didn't know her kids' names. Now, she wanted nothing more than to be mom again. Not perfect, not forgiven, just present. The envelope sat on the counter for 3 days. Louise walked past it each morning, poured her coffee beside it, fed the kids while it hovered like a ghost. Mark had slid it across the table with no ceremony. "It's time," he said simply. There was no fight, no lecture, just those 2 words, and the look in his eyes that said this wasn't about punishment. It was about peace. The night she finally opened it, the apartment was silent. The kids were asleep in the next room. The small clock ticked too loud. She read every line slowly, as if that would delay the weight of what was happening. It was clean, fair. No cheap shots, no tricks. Mark had given her joint custody, equal time, no alimony. He didn't ask for the house or try to squeeze her out of anything. He even left her the old sedan they used for school drop-offs. It was the most graceful ending she could have hoped for, and somehow that made it worse. She called him the next day, asked to meet. They sat in the coffee shop on Main Street, the one they used to visit on Sunday mornings. The same booth, same cracked table. Louise slid the signed forms across. "I've read it all. It's fair." Mark nodded. "Good." She waited, hoping for something. A word, a pause, a question. But he just sipped his coffee. "I never meant to lose us," she said. "I know. I thought maybe, if we had more space, if we tried something new." "You wanted more," he said. "I get that now. But the way you went looking, you can't come back from that." Louise nodded. "I don't want to make excuses." "Good," he said again. Like a man finishing the final page of a book, he'd already stopped caring about halfway through. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she asked, "Are you in love with Emily?" Mark didn't flinch. "I don't know. Maybe." Louise looked down at her hands. Her nails were chipped. She hadn't noticed. "She fits this version of me," he said quietly. "The one that came after." Louise looked out the window, watching a couple walk by, hand in hand, laughing about something only they understood. She used to be in that world. The world of we. Now she was just her. Mark pushed his cup forward and stood. "I'll file it on Monday." She nodded. "Thank you for not making it harder." He paused, then offered her the smallest smile, kind, distant, final. "It got easier when I stopped hoping you'd come back." She didn't cry until after he left. Back in the apartment, she found Tyler on the couch, watching a movie with Ella curled beside him. They looked up, saw her face, and didn't ask questions. Tyler scooted over, gave her room. Ella leaned into her. Louise put her arms around them and held on tight. She'd lost the man she built a life with, but these two, she still had a chance. Not to fix the past, but to build something steady from the wreckage. And this time, she'd build it with both hands. The apartment still smelled faintly like fresh paint and cardboard. The walls were bare, the furniture modest, and the view overlooked a parking lot. But to Louise, it was something else entirely. It was hers. For the first time in a long while, she didn't wake up to Mark's footsteps or his silence. There was no tension in the air, no pretending, just the steady sound of her daughter humming in the bathroom and her son tapping his spoon against a cereal bowl. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was quieter than regret. She started therapy a week after the divorce finalized. No dramatic breakthroughs, no crying fits. Just honest conversations with someone who didn't flinch when she admitted how badly she'd messed things up, how selfish she'd been, how blind. Each session left her raw, but lighter. In the evenings, she made dinner from scratch, even if it was just spaghetti. Tyler started doing his homework at the kitchen table again. Ella brought her drawings and asked for feedback. Slowly, they were letting her back in. Not because she begged, but because she kept showing up. One night, while folding laundry, she found one of Mark's old t-shirts mixed in with the kids' clothes. She held it for a second, then placed it in the donation box without a word. There was no going back. Across town, she heard from the kids that Mark and Emily had taken them hiking, camping, even bowling. Ella said Emily made weird jokes and burned pancakes. Tyler said she talked too much but always remembered his favorite snacks. Stung, but not the way it once did. Louise no longer saw Emily as a rival, just a woman who picked up where she let go. And Mark? He seemed settled. Not smiling all the time, but no longer hollow. He'd carved out a new life for himself. Louise didn't hate him for it. If anything, she was thankful he didn't collapse under the weight of her choices. She was finally strong enough to see that now. One Sunday, while watching the kids draw chalk on the sidewalk, Ella looked up and said, "You're more fun now." Louise smiled. "How come?" "You laugh again," Ella said, shrugging. "You used to just sigh all the time." Louise didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she just nodded. "I guess I'm figuring things out." "Are you happy now?" Ella asked. Louise looked at the sky. Blue. Clear. No storms overhead. "Not all the way, but I'm getting there." And for the first time in months, she meant it. She wasn't looking for another man. Not yet. Not for a long time, maybe. She was learning how to be alone without feeling empty. How to rebuild a life from smaller, quieter pieces. The marriage was over, but she was still a mother, still a woman, still someone worth putting back together. And this time, she'd do it without breaking anyone else in the process.